same height.
Yeah. 6 foot.
Welcome once again to the Cow Report. I think we're on the air. Okay, good. We are on the air. All right, with me tonight we have Craig Lee from Eau Claire, and he'll be helping with the program. And nice to see you, Craig. And I know you're not new to TV, are you?
No, heck no. I go back quite a few years. I'm sure a lot of you out there in TV land recognize me. I used to be on the very popular show called Dallas.
Really?
My friends call me J.R. Ewing around Eau Claire.
What was your role on Dallas?
Oh, I was a extra on Dallas, but I did star in a lot of films in Mexico years ago, and it's sure great to be here. I haven't done live television in a lot of years, so it should be interesting tonight.
Didn't you say you used to do some commercials on Channel 13 too?
Oh yes, yes. That was a lot of fun back in the old days.
Okay, well, you know, Fred's been under the weather. He had a little stomach ache last week, and it seemed to get worse, and so he's still not feeling too well. So hopefully Fred will be with us next week again. And but tonight is pre-election night. Tomorrow is the big day, and I've been out campaigning for months now. Seems almost like years. Actually, I started thinking about this race back in September of '93, and got into it officially in July of '94. And here it is November, so that's July, August, September, October, going into our 5th month since the race officially started. So it's been a long haul. We've been through probably 8 or 9 seminars and debates and forums, and I feel like I won several of them and tied a couple, and some of the others, like the first one, I don't know how I did. I was kind of uneasy that type of format, but things progressed, and now here it's the night before elections, and we got a lot to talk about. I'm sure everyone saw yesterday's Leader Telegram. It kind of talked about our race, the third congressional district race, and yeah, there we are. Yesterday's Leader Telegram, and it had a political potluck was the front headline. But the 4 candidates in tomorrow's race for this district are Steve Gunderson, the incumbent, Mark Weinholt, the independent, myself, Chuck Lee, as the U.S. Taxpayers Party, and Harvey Stour as the Democrat. And the pollsters, the only true poll, Craig, that we've seen, say it's a toss-up. Too close to call, so it's anybody's game.
Chuck, I think you're going to walk away with it tomorrow, and I was real impressed this evening with your optimism. When I asked Chuck this evening, I noticed a little sweat on his brow, and I said, are you a little nervous? And he said, no, I've been practicing my acceptance speech for tomorrow. So, good luck tomorrow, Chuck. I know you're going to walk away with it.
I'll tell you, these lights down here get extra hot.
They are.
You can get a suntan in here if you sit here for about an hour. You get a sunburn. And I tell you, we haven't had much sleep. The last 4 or 5 days, we've just been doing flat out. I've been on interviews on Wisconsin Public Television on Saturday evening. I had about a 14-minute interview, or a segment on there about at 5:30. We had a real good interview on down in Lancaster, Wisconsin, on a Christian station down there. That lasted about 15 minutes. And we've been picking up some press. Had another interview at a New Richmond radio station, and I just talked to the Milwaukee Sentinel this afternoon. And so it's been really hectic, and plus we've had lit drops. Literature, if people don't know what that is, that means putting literature door to door and handing out to people and talking to them and giving them literature. And in political circles, it's called a lit drop. And usually on the weekend before an election, everybody's out doing their lit drops. So I was out doing mine in La Crosse, and we had another team doing one here in Eau Claire, and we had some other people over in Menominee. So we've been really working hard on this, and we made the 100,000 mark, Craig.
All right.
I was saying that I wanted to get out 100,000 pieces of literature by the election day, and we made that today. That's a lot of literature to get out in about 4.5 months. Well,
Chuck, excuse me, I would like to tell our audience the reason that I'm here. I've been working with Chuck on the campaign, and as he said, it's been a It's a lot of work, a lot of fun. We've met a lot of you nice folks out there. But the reason I got acquainted with Chuck is that I had a problem earlier this year. The state of Wisconsin, the Department of Natural Resources, was giving me kind of a hard time on a problem I had, and a lot of you farmers probably face, is with some of the old buried gas tanks. And the Department of Labor and Industry and the DNR had been giving me quite a bit of heat on this, and I was in fear of losing my home. Well, I got a hold of Chuck, and he said, "Come on, Craig, let's go down to Madison." So we went down to the Capitol there, and through Chuck giving me information that was very pertinent to my problem, and he keyed in on the fact that the problem that I was facing, and a lot of you folks out there, maybe you businessmen and farmers, is this is an unfunded mandate that the state government had put upon myself. And so I explored that avenue with Chuck's assistance and advice at the time, and by golly, everything worked out fine. So you've got a real good man here, and let's get out and vote for the Chuck Lee tomorrow.
Well, I'm glad you got that straightened out, Craig, because that is a burden on thousands of people in the state. I know there's a guy over in Augusta that's sitting on some tanks at a gas station over there, and he can't sell the property. He's tied up in court. He's just in limbo. Now, the state, what you said they did, they said to everybody, you got to have those tanks out of the ground and by a certain date, and and then they just left it to the people. Well, a lot of those tanks were in the ground before people even bought that land.
Exactly.
And I hope we're going to get our line straightened out so it doesn't ring in here. Maybe not, or I'll just turn it down. That's the problem. This phone was used yesterday. You know, as you know, yesterday was a big day down here at Public Access. They had the big auction, and so we're still trying to get everything back in order here. I think I'll turn these ringers off, and then they won't ring in here. There, but they, I guess they had a real successful auction yesterday and sold pretty much everything they had in the auction. And you know, Craig, you look around the studio, and I've been in several TV studios around the state in the last few months, and they've done a lot. They've really scraped together and held this thing and kept it on the air all these years with just a minimum of equipment, and they are in need of better equipment and better facilities. And I've been in some beautiful state-funded facilities down at the technical school down in La Crosse. They've got a fantastic studio there, and it's real interesting that you have to give Joel and Sherry credit for keeping the station going down here. A lot of this equipment's antiquated, you know. They have to patch it together. I walked in here this afternoon, and Joel was back here patching up some piece of equipment to make sure that they could get everything on the air tonight. So it's to their credit that they've kept this thing going all these years.
They do a terrific job here.
And you know, most of this is volunteer. We got Roy Rogers Hoff in there running back and forth. He's volunteering his services. And we've got Skip and Cliff and several others that volunteer their time, and you volunteer your time, and it's without all those volunteer hours, the show couldn't go on, as they say.
That's right.
So remember that next time they have a fundraiser or they need a little help, or you can join Public Access for a minimal amount of money. What is the fee now, Roy? About 20, 25 bucks for an individual, and what's the organization, about 50 or 60? So any organizations out there that would like to use Public Access for talking about their nonprofit organizations, or individuals would like to produce their own programs and make their own movies and air them, they should join. And there's a lot of students back in town now, school's back in, so here I've lost all of September and October and going into November. Just lost it. Mail's piled up at home, and when you get in these campaigns, you lose you lose your home life and everything. It's just everything's campaigning, and so I guess school's been in since September, you know.
Chuck, what's the headlines today?
What's the headlines today? I don't know. I don't have today's paper, but I do have an official ballot from the county clerk and probably the city, but lists all the candidates that are running. And this time around, there are 5 bona fide parties in the state, at least countywide, on our ballot countywide. And the five parties now that are considered bona fide parties by the state of Wisconsin are Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, New Progressive, and U.S. Taxpayer, as far as I know. There might be some others in other parts of the state, but up here, they show these as that you can vote a straight party ticket. Now, the way it looks, that's it. So there's 5 parties. So the party I'm on now, you can vote a straight ticket, and we do have candidates running in other parts of the state. There's a lot of different local races, but in the county, there's only one, actually there's no county board or county courthouse races contested. Joanne Lister, Larry Loken, Richard Hewitt, Diana Miller, Beverly Halverson, those are all uncontested races. And Ray Pelrine is a county-wide race. He works in the courthouse, but I guess that's more of a kind of a state-appointed or state-type office. So those are all uncontested. Then you get over into nonpartisan. There is one county board race this year, and that is in District number 26, county supervisor race. And the only person running is Ellery Jordahl. He was, earlier this year, he was appointed to fill an unexpired term for somebody that moved out of the district. So now E.G. Ellery Jordahl is running unopposed for that seat. So that takes care of the Eau Claire County. Up in Chippewa County, some of the viewers, they catch the northern part of Chippewa County is in the southern part of Chippewa County can be seen on public access. And they have some races up there. Now the county clerk, Jerome Dockel, he ran against Dave Zien last time and lost. He's running unopposed again up there. And Arlene Ziffelhofer, she's running as treasurer unopposed. But there's an interesting race in the sheriff's race in Chippewa County. There's 2 bona fide Democratic Republican candidates, but then there's another Democrat that's running as a write-in. So that's going to be an interesting 3-way race up there. And then for coroner, they have Catherine Garretts, unopposed, clerk of the circuit court, Janet Rubenzer Pike, unopposed, and then register of deeds, they have a contested race, Marge Geisler against Joel Sperber. So tomorrow is the big day. You know, there's going to be just the television, radio, and everything's just going to be plastered with election returns, probably from about 8 o'clock tomorrow night till about 3 in the morning. And from what I understand, we have some calls, so we're going to see how the phones are working tonight, and we'll take our first call. Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Hi, Chuck. How you doing?
All right.
I'm thinking about going to the polls tomorrow, but before I do, I'd like to know your stance on property taxes.
On property taxes, like state?
Local.
Local. Okay, property taxes, local, that's kind of a local issue. I'm running for federal office. So I think they're too high. I think the assessments are too high, and I guess the city clerk and from their assessments are getting a lot of heat over the recent assessments. Now, I had a piece of property out in a township, Union Township, that went up 90%. They said the assessments averaged 34% inside the city limits. Mine just happened to go up 90%, so I'm not too happy about that. Well, do you have some property that you're...
Well, no, but I'm thinking about purchasing some. But I do have a joke I'd like to tell you. It's coming for good luck for you tomorrow.
All right.
Okay, knock, knock.
Who's there?
Roy.
Roy who?
Roy Vaught.
Roy Vaught?
Yeah, you like that one?
Yeah, that's pretty good. Who's Roy Vaught?
Well, I'll leave that to you, but it's for good luck tomorrow, okay?
Okay.
Okay, fuck off, man.
Thanks for calling. All right, I'm glad we got that caller ID in place now so we can tell when we have problem calls.
You bet.
And we want to remind the callers that please keep your language clean. This is an English language program, and we'd like to keep it that way. No foreign languages allowed. All right, Craig, what do you think about some of these races? On the governor's race, I'm going to ask you where you're at on that. Who you think is going to win?
Well, if you believe in astrology for good luck, I would imagine our present Governor Thompson will remain in office. Do you recall, Chuck, when you took me down to Madison to the Capitol to visit with the governor? We were waiting in his office, and on the entryway he has astrology figures painted around the entry.
Yeah, it was most unusual. Now I think, I think to give him the benefit of the doubt that I think that it's been there for quite a while, but they looked like they had been freshly touched up, but they do have the actual 12 signs of the zodiac on the archways in the governor's reception room right off from his office, and that's the main reception room where they have dignitaries come through, or on Inauguration Day you can walk through there and shake hands with the governor and other dignitaries and his wife. And the first time I noticed it was the last time they had the elections back in '92. I was down there for the inauguration. I filmed that and put it on public access. Real colorful event. But I noticed those zodiac signs in there. So then we were down there the other day. I took photographs of that, and yes, they are the actual 12 signs of the zodiac in the governor's outer office, which used to be part of the inner office. Got ornate paintings on the ceiling, but maybe somebody can call in tonight and explain why they have the signs of the zodiac in the governor's office. It could be something left over from the radical days of Tony Earl and that bunch was in there. Maybe they painted it in there. I don't know.
Yeah, who knows?
But I think we got another call, according to Roy Rogers Hoff. And you know how he got that name from Hopalong Cassidy. His parents used to watch Hopalong Cassidy back in the 50s on TV. So they named him Roy Rogers Hoff in honor of Hopalong Cassidy.
Say, did you ever wonder, did y'all ever watch the Today Show and you see him bringing up that cup with CBS or whatever on it? And do you ever see him swallow? Well, here we do on the Cow Report.
Yeah.
Best drink in town, good old Eau Claire water. Go ahead there, Chuck.
Well, you know, Eau Claire stands for clear water, doesn't it?
That's right.
And we do have pretty good water in Eau Claire.
That's a German word for clear water.
But unfortunately, somebody on the campaign trail wanted to talk about local water problems, and they said the water sewer rates are going sky high again, or they're going to be increased. And this guy showed me a water bill for $160, and I couldn't believe it that it was that high. But that was a quarter, I guess 3 months or something.
Yeah,
like
he
that.
probably owns a car wash.
But it showed, no, he's just a guy living in a house, and he couldn't believe how high it is, and now it's going to go up 8% on top of that. So he's kind of ticked off about that. Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Yeah, you got the common man.
Which one?
Oh, which one? Oh my gosh, I think there's only one, isn't there? There's really.
Common, where you been hiding? Are you still doing shows down here, public access?
Oh yeah.
The racing season over now?
Yeah, all the racing seasons are over.
How's the cars doing?
Which one?
Sybil, is it still going?
Oh, that machine? Yeah, still keeps going.
Well, Common, what's on your mind tonight?
Well, I guess I suppose elections and all that good stuff, just like everybody else is, I suppose.
Did you have an election special on your show?
I would have liked to. But I couldn't get my next show scheduled until after the election because I'm doing a live one, so that's the way it goes.
Oh, what do you think about them live shows?
Well, I did one, and matter of fact, that one had something that you'd kind of like on there. That's right. So that's right. Remember, I said I ripped Gunderson sign in half.
You did?
Yep, that's the one I did it on.
I didn't see that. I was out actively seeking votes on the campaign trail, so I missed that.
I was going to say it's probably still in the room there. It's the one from May. You should sneak it out. Maybe have Roy find that spot and show it before the show's over.
Yeah.
Anyway, speaking of signs, then I got a whole bunch of them there with your name on. I couldn't find one. So I ended up making up one myself.
Well, good.
Now it says Chuck Lee for 3rd District Congress, but I also wrote on there host of Cow Report.
Well, good. We like to see that because we like to see that grassroots effort because it's hard to get.
Cruise around by my place I think you know where it is. And you'll find it.
Now you know Roy Rogers Hoff, don't you?
Sure.
Okay.
We go back to junior high. That's why we've both been driving each other crazy ever since.
Oh. Okay. Well, what do you think? I'm going to ask you about one of these races here and see what you think, who you think is going to win. The Attorney General's race. It's a three-way race.
Oh, yeah.
Jim Doyle, the Democrat.
I'll tell you, that Doyle has been really running some awful nasty ads.
Jeff Wagner, the Republican. Then they've got
I'm hoping for Wagner, but
they've got a Libertarian in that race, Stephen Diebert.
I don't know nothing about him. I don't follow the Libertarians too much.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a three-way race, sir.
Uh,
Who do you think's going to win that one?
like I say, I'm pulling for Wagner. I won't kid you. I'm turning the Republican and just about everybody else.
Uh-huh.
Uh,
Okay.
One more thing. I'm still, like I say, I am still confused on this Wisconsin Right to Life deciding to back Stour. I kept thinking the only thing I could think of was either just because he belongs to one of the two, as they say, longest running parties there or something. But I called them up and tried to get them to change their endorsement to you, but apparently they still don't want to do it. Maybe that's, like I say, it's either that good old two-party system, or maybe it's because you haven't held an office yet. I don't know.
Well, they bent the rules a little bit. They sent out a postcard over the last few days, and instead of having just the Democrat and Republican on the postcard, they added my name to it in the 3rd District and put down Stour, Gunderson, and Lee, and they gave Stour and Lee the same rating on it, that we were both pro-life. So that helps a little bit, but I've got one up on Stour because I have the official tally from the other pro-life group, Pro-Life Wisconsin, and they named me in the 3rd District as the only candidate that stands for the Paramount Human Life Amendment. And that includes Gunderson, Stour, and Weinholt. None of them got that listing, and I was listed for the 3rd District along with Bob Welch in the U.S. Senate. That Welch is a pretty good conservative guy there. He's got a lot on the ball too, and I agree with him right down the line on about 99% of what he's doing. But in this one, the Paramount Human Life Amendment says the paramount right of life, a right to life, is vested in each human being from the moment of fertilization without regard to age, health, or condition of dependency. And I was the only one that scored on that in the 3rd District. So along with that and the Wisconsin Right to Life bulletin that went out, that shows me as the candidate with a 100% right answer.
I know, but I know you got the 100% record there, but like
well,
I say,
well, they're taking
Stour's name up there in the bold letters, and I called him on that, and I even, I said the same thing. I says to him, Chuck is more pro-life, than Stour. I mentioned everything that we, of course I had to mention that we know each other from doing our shows and everything, and all that. And
Common, we're going to have you on here.
Still seems like they were leaning toward Stour just because of the old two-party system, probably.
Well, they are kind of locked into that, but I think that's crumbling because I understand they're taking a lot of heat in some other races down south, and people are refusing to make calls for them. And they're up against it because the rumor is that they've been leaning towards Democrats in some of these races lately. And, the evil of two lessers is that we've ended up with 30 million dead babies because of the compromises. And that's why Pro-Life Wisconsin won't compromise. They'll just endorse candidates that are pro-life.
Yeah.
And so,
that's the way it should be, really. Or as Russians say, that's the way it ought to be, like his book title there,
Yep. Yes, sir. Well, we got other calls coming, so we'll have to sign off, and maybe we'll have you on the show one of these days real soon. And that reminds me of something, so I'll let you go now, Common, and we'll see you again real soon.
Okay.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Yep.
Now, that reminded me of something. We've got a guest coming on the next time we're on the evening, which I think is 2 weeks from tonight. And that guest is Brian Getz. Now, you know where he has a show at?
I give up.
Way Radio.
Wow.
I think it's from 6 to 9 in the mornings, a.m. It's a live call-in show, and they talk about everything under the sun there. And I've been on the show with Fred before, and I was on there just recently being interviewed as a candidate, and I just threw it out to him and offered for him to be on the show, and he agreed. So it looks like it's still a go for 2 weeks from tonight. So you'll get a chance to see who this Brian Getz guy is. You've heard his voice for years, but you haven't seen the face. So now they put the voice and the face together, and you can call in and ask him about anything you want to. go back on some of these controversial shows he's had and really come out with the tough questions for him.
Chuck, I got a question.
Yep.
Is it a fair comparison to compare an unborn baby to a pizza? Well, let me tell you what happened. I'm cruising down the highway in my car this afternoon. Rush Limbaugh had signed off, and then there's the next gentleman comes on. His name slips me. But this girl calls in, and she says, you know, her heart goes out for all these unborn babies that are, the gals are having the abortions, and she was speaking about the gentleman that, the doctor that was shot and killed in Florida, and she was comparing that loss of life just as tragic as the doctor losing his life. And then the moderator says, well, let's compare this. Let's say you're in the kitchen, your husband's making a pizza, and he eats the whole thing, don't let you have any. Is it right for you to kill him? And like she said, you're comparing a pizza to an unborn child? You know, it's just crazy.
Yeah.
These
it sure
poor
is.
little children that are being butchered.
Yeah, well, some people don't look at it that way, but that's why I think on the federal level, if the government's going to be involved, it should be in proper education of people so that they know that that is a human being that's growing
Right.
inside of a mother. And that would help quite a bit if they had the proper education. I'm sure that would
Yes.
cut down on the number of abortions. I think according to Roy Rogers Hoff, who's rapidly been running back and forth tonight, the guy's lost 5 pounds right before our eyes, just running back and forth these cameras. He does a real bang-up job, you know it?
He's great.
He's underpaid and overworked. Roy Rogers Hoff. He's from the old school. I think it was Mount Washington, wasn't it?
That's an old school.
I think they closed that too, didn't they?
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Yes, I have a question to ask you. For yard signs, where are the disclaimers on there?
Oh, well, here's one right here. And what she means by a disclaimer is on your yard signs that you see in people's yards, they have a little, either be typed or handwritten or any way you want it to be written. You can, you have to put on there authorized and paid for by whoever. And so on mine say authorized and paid for by Chuck Lee for Congress. And on my 4x8 ones, and I've got some sheets out, bed sheets that are large size, and I write mine on there with ink so that in case it rains, it doesn't get washed off. But from time to time, they might get washed off, and then people will call up and make a hassle on it. It's usually the other party will give that person a hassle about their yard signs, and so you have to go through the hassle of running out and fixing your yard signs and making sure your disclaimers on them.
Evidently, this lady is considering running for office, and she just wants to know where to put it when she gets her signs out.
Well, you can put it anywhere. You can put it on the top or the bottom or in the middle, just as long as you say that on there. And if there's one out there that doesn't have my name on it, I apologize, and we'll get right out there and take care of that, or we'll get it. All the signs will be down by tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. The state laws on that say that you have to have them down by a certain time after the election's over, and usually I've been working in elections since 1960, so I usually try and get them down the same night or the next morning after an election, after the polls close, so that that's taken care of. So we apologize if one of our signs doesn't have a disclaimer on it. It's no big deal, but some people feel like it is. Like Roy probably can't get a close-up on it, but even pieces of literature have a disclaimer on them. And this is a piece of literature, but at the bottom there's a little disclaimer. This one comes from the Taxpayers Party, so it says, paid for by the U.S. Taxpayers Party of Wisconsin, William Hemingway, Treasurer. Okay, I think Roy said that there's probably a couple more calls waiting. Now, have you got anything exciting there that you wanted to bring up before we go to the next call?
Let's get that next call. That's the most important. This is the election eve.
Yeah. Roy, are you having problems there? Yeah, Roy, I'm telling you, he's working up a sweat tonight. Poor guy, but he does a good job there.
You betcha.
And we are going to take a call very shortly. But, you know Pat Buchanan, you ever heard of him?
I believe I have. He's a comedian.
No? Some people might think he is. But he ran for president in '92 against Bush. And he had several million votes. And then after the election, he got to speak after the primaries were over, he got to speak at the National Convention. But I was looking at some of the issues that are on the front burner now in Washington, and some of them just kind of dovetail right into some of the issues that I was dealing with out on the campaign trail. Like one of them was cutting some of the foreign aid. You know, in a lot of cases we waste foreign aid. We just recently we sent billions of dollars to Russia when we have farmers going out of business right here in the 3rd District because they can't get loans or they got short, a piece of equipment broke down, they didn't have enough money to stay in business and the loan came due, and so we're losing farmers off the land right here in the 3rd District while we're pumping billions of dollars into the former Soviet Union. And a lot of these foreign dictators stuff are very ungrateful about the massive amounts of foreign aid that we give to them. And in a lot of cases we prop up terrorist type regimes that harass and kill and maim and arrest their own citizens, and in some cases they use American money and machinery and guns to do that harassing and stuff. And so we need to take a close look at the foreign aid situation and start trimming where we can and re-diverting that money into what I call domestic aid for the family farmers and others who would like to get back into farming.
I hear, Chuck, that the construction industry just got a big shot in the arm this past week. Our President Clinton signed the authorization to build 25,000 new homes for retired Russian military officers in Russia. This is wonderful.
For their construction. Yeah,
Right,
for their
right.
construction workers, right? Yeah, that was a deal that Clinton cut with them, that to get them out of one of the countries, we agreed to build all those homes at 30, 40, 50,000 apiece. Now, that's a pretty
Right.
fancy house in Russia
You bet.
when some of the people over there are only making $20, $30 a week. It's a
Right.
pretty nice little house for those soldiers. That's just to get them out of some of the countries they've already signed agreements to get out of anyway. So now we're being kind of blackmailed into saying we're going to stay unless you build houses for us at the Americans' expense. So let's try and take a call here and see what we can do here. Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Hi, Chuck. How you doing?
All right.
I'm just wondering what you think your chances are against Herb Cole tomorrow.
Pretty good if I was running against Herb, but
Oh, really? I thought you were.
unfortunately I'm running against Steve Gunderson, Harvey Stour, and Mark Weinhold.
Oh, really? Yeah, I don't like Steve Gunderson very much. He has something against homosexuals, doesn't he?
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. I got one other question for you. Due to the breakup of communism in the former Soviet Union, what do you think the chances are that the United States will let down their defenses to, possibly let a Soviet attack on the United States?
Well, that's a very good question there. You know, Craig, the former Soviet Union still has a war machine that they're building at a terrible rate, a very ferocious rate, because they have to keep people employed. And so those people are still in those armament plants building everything from tanks to nuclear submarines to airplanes to missiles. They just cut a deal with Brazil, of all places, to send 100 surface-to-air missiles to Brazil in exchange for grain. Now, here we are on one hand putting money into one pocket of the Soviet Union. On the other hand, they're taking money out of their own economy because we're freeing it up for them by giving them money. So we free up money in their other pocket to continue their war machine. And it's terrible. They are building at a ferocious rate, and we are dismantling our military. And right now, most of the major military leaders of this country say that we couldn't ever put on, at this point, we could not put on another Desert Storm type operation because we don't have the manpower, we don't have enough equipment. We've got a lot of equipment that is being what they call cannibalized. So you got 10 airplanes, maybe 3 of the airplanes are just being used for parts to keep the other 7 flying. And we don't need that situation. But I think in a lot of cases there are places in the world like Germany and Japan where we don't need to have all those troops over there guarding Toyota and Volkswagen. Those are two of the richest nations in the world, and it's time that they did their share to take care of their own country. But we do need to have tripwire type, just a small contingency of soldiers still in those countries in case of a tripwire where the Russians try something, and then we will have our troops in place so that we can respond rapidly, because we would be in that, that's where we've been since 1945, is in that tripwire thing. But we had thousands and thousands of troops over in Germany, and they are starting to scale back. But right tonight, Craig, in the world, we've got troops, American troops, in 100 nations.
No.
This country is the cop of the world. We're the mercenaries of the world. I don't know why they always call upon us to supply boys and girls dressed in uniforms with guns to be in 100 different nations, but we are at this very moment in 100 nations. A lot of those in a lot of those countries we're under foreign commanders. In Haiti tonight we have 20,000 American boys and girls in Haiti. We've been very fortunate down there. Other than a couple suicides and a couple woundings, we haven't lost any lives in combat. But that is the paramount unfunded mandate. Now, a few years ago, we had people in the state of Wisconsin complaining from the Madison level about unfunded mandates that are dumped on the local economies, the
Right.
state or the local municipalities. Now, that's went up one step to now where we're saying Washington is dumping unfunded mandates on the states, demanding that we cough up money to do things. But this is a Washington unfunded mandate. Steve Gunderson or no assembly person in the United States Congress voted to send those troops into Haiti, but there we are, and it's going to cost $400 million. And that is a very expensive unfunded mandate that we have. And if something does happen and it heats up down there, we could be down there longer and it would cost more. So,
We're under the jurisdiction of the United Nations, whether you folks know it or not out there, and that's why we're all over the world. Former President Bush got this instigated for this New World Order, and there are a lot of foreign troops in the United States, a lot of foreign armament in the United States. You'll be seeing more and more of this, and we've legislated ourselves beyond repair. It's too late to save the United States. Maybe the one world government is going to be the way to go, Chuck. It might be better. But when you legislate away to this New World Order, then you take away individual freedoms, and that's what scares the pants off of me.
well, it kind of dovetails into this NAFTA. The way I look at
Yes.
it, back in the early 80s, our government had to start busting the unions, start taking away from their power, because the unions were very powerful in the 70s and into the 80s. So you saw Ronald Reagan bust the Air Traffic Controllers Union. That was the first
Right.
big union that got busted. And then there was a succession of unions just losing their strength and power in politics. And now you're seeing a small resurgence finally, but the unions are finally waking up now. They've seen NAFTA slip by, and it's cost 52,000 American jobs in 1 year since NAFTA's been put into place. And yes, folks, Ross Perot was right. In 1 year's time, 52,000 Americans have lost their jobs. And ask those 52,000 families what they think about NAFTA. So that was after they knocked the unions and put them in their place and took away a lot of their power through busting unions. Then they instituted the NAFTA, which kind of takes away a lot of the tariffs, so the cheaply made goods can pour into this country, and it's very hard for farmers in the 3rd Congressional District to compete against farmers in Mexico. Now we can compete pretty good against Canadian farmers because they're pretty much on a par, but the equipment costs and everything up here, I mean, we're talking about Stone Age in Mexico compared to the modern age up here, and they can get cheap labor. They can get as much cheap labor as they want, and eventually we'll see Mexican milk side by side with Wisconsin milk competing for shelf space in the grocery stores thanks to NAFTA. So that's why we need to reverse NAFTA, and we need to stop GATT in its tracks. Now, the General Agreement on Trades and Tariffs, President Clinton and D.D. Myers said that's going to pass one way or another. So then they came up with the scheme to hold the vote on that after the election. In other words, these guys were too chicken to hold a vote on GATT before this election that's coming up tomorrow. So they held off on it, and they're going to have what they call a lame duck session. That's when all the losers come back to Washington, the people have lost, and also the ones that were that were incumbents that won. They will be going back to Washington, and they'll be voting to sell out part of our sovereignty in the GATT agreement that's coming down the line, the next layer above NAFTA. And if it's not unconstitutional, it should be, because those people are not answering to anybody, especially the ones that lost their races, because it's after the fact. If they're a loser, they go out there and they vote for GATT. Who are they going to answer to? Because they're going to be out of office in January anyway. So it's a very serious situation there, and it's a big lie that Clinton is pushing to do that. It's deceiving the public, and it's not fair that they are doing that. They should wait until the new Congress takes office in January, and then I can vote on it, and I can vote it down.
Talk about deception. When you debated with Congressman Gunderson this past week, he was painting the glories of the NAFTA agreement, what it's done for our dairy farmers' imports into Mexico. And I didn't get answered by Mr. Gunderson. My question is, well, explain to me why there's an import tax right now on United States milk going into Mexico. Explain that one. And then also, there's banditos in Mexico. A lot of hijackings are going on of U.S. milk that's attempting to get into Mexico. So how good is this NAFTA? It's bad news.
I understand some of the milk is being turned back at the border too. Mexico doesn't want it in there because right now they still consider themselves at a disadvantage, and for a while we'll be able to push our milk on them, but eventually they're going to get the good breeding stock cattle down there. They're going to get all the modern equipment for making cheese. They're going to get all the modern milking equipment. You're going to see giant corporate farms down there that are just going to put out millions of gallons of milk, and it's going to be right here on the grocery shelves, just like orange juice. Now you'd say to yourself, well, orange juice comes from Florida and California. You look closely on your orange juice package next time you buy orange juice, and you'll see the word Brazil on there. And you're drinking Brazilian orange juice, so why wouldn't you be drinking Mexican milk? And of course, there's chemicals that they can use in Mexico on the feed, on the grains they grow down there that we've outlawed years ago. So you don't know what you're going to get in the milk that way either. And they might push BGH down there in Mexico and start producing super amounts, put all the cows on what they call crack for cows at BGH, and speed up their production and even make more milk coming in. But what the bottom line is that's going to lower the price of milk eventually when the Mexicans get all their production online and gear up and start really pushing the milk into this country. Well, I think we have another call according to Roy Rogers Hoff, so we'll try and take that call. Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Yeah, Chuck, I'd like to ask you a question. I'd like to ask you what you think of the 3rd District Chair for the Republican Party, Doug Knight, and what his functions are, and I'll hang up and listen to your answer.
Okay, thank you. Well, I am not in the Republican Party anymore. I left the party after 22 years. I was in the party from 1972 till 1994. Came in under Nixon and left the party under a Democrat. I think the function of a third district party like that would be to be in a neutral position, because you've got a lot of forces that are pulling at a party all the time. You got moderates, liberals, and conservatives. And then you have some others that are kind of a mixture of both, or all three. So the role of somebody in a position like that would be to be a peacemaker, but also to be neutral and not to take sides. And unfortunately, in the 3rd District, Doug Knight has been very biased towards one particular side in the several groups that are vying for power, and he shouldn't be in that position. He was elected to lead the 3rd District Republican Party and be neutral as far as siding with anybody. He shouldn't be doing that. So he's kind of let the district down in that regard. On the other side, though, the party is growing. to a certain part, and the reason it's growing is because the Christians and conservatives are finding fewer places to call home in the political spectrum, so they're making their last stand in the Republican Party, and I think they're starting to feel that their welcome is being worn out in that party, thanks to people like Doug Knight and Haley Barbour and others that are kind of letting the party drift to the left. And so I think there's big problems in the Republican Party. The party, Abraham Lincoln stole a verse out of the Bible, and it said, "A house divided against itself cannot stand." And in the 1850s, the Republican Party was formed right here in Ripon, Wisconsin. Now the party is being destroyed right here in Ripoff, Wisconsin. So from Ripoff to Ripon, and from Ripon to Ripoff, 140 years later, the party is disintegrating right before the eyes of the American public. You're seeing Republicans endorse Democrats. You're seeing Democrats come in for Republicans. You're seeing somebody like Steve Gunderson that no longer adheres to the Republican Party and is catering to some of the most liberal Democrats imaginable. And so there is, the monolithic two-party system is crumbling, but you're seeing the Republican Party crumble faster. The Democratic Party had their meltdown quite a few years ago when the socialists and the communists flocked into the party and took over the leadership role in there, and you see nothing but left-wing propaganda coming out of there. Well, now you see those same elements coming in and trying to destroy the Republican Party, and they're doing a pretty good job of it. They're moving in force now. The pro-abortion people, the pro-homosexual people, and the liberals are moving in and going for broke and trying to destroy the Republican Party. So what is going to happen out of it is you're having a major realignment in the party system, and you'll probably see more of a conservative, moderate, and liberal. See three different wings develop, and it'll no longer be just people voting Democrat, Republican. There's other players in the ballpark now. So, I hope that answered your question. Go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Hi, Chuck. How's it going?
Okay.
I see that you shaved your beard.
Yes, I did. I shaved it after many, many years. I wanted to see what I look like as you grow older. You know, you don't know how you're looking with a beard, and I've had the beard most of the last 20 years, and so I thought it was time to just shave it off, and I'll probably grow it back again. You know, it's hunting season, so it's time to shave. Some people grow a beard for hunting season. I shave mine off for.
Oh, you're looking good.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Is it true that you shaved your curlies too?
I don't know. I'm getting I'm losing a little hair up there on my head. You know, when you get older, you start losing it. But hopefully, my dad had a good head of hair when he was when he was 59. So hopefully, mine will stay on there a few more years. I'd hate to get one of those rugs up there. Okay, go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Yeah. Say, what's wrong with Fred tonight?
Well, Freddie, he's a little bit under the weather.
Huh.
Hopefully we'll see him back again in next week for the 2 o'clock show.
Good. Well, we miss him on there because he always looks so sharp, you know.
Yeah, he does. He's very color coordinated, and Betty really helps in that area. And you can't beat the color coordination because it's a dying art in this country.
Well, what do you have with you tonight? Is he a professor or a doctorate? Who you got with you tonight there?
You got Craig Lee, and he's helping out tonight, and he helps on the cameras from time to time. And Craig's a former actor, and he starred in. I know you starred in a Mexican movie because I saw some excerpts from it.
Well, you all might like to go down and see my last film, El Bando de Carro Rojo, Parte Dos. That will be playing at your nearest Spanish-speaking theater.
Uh-huh. And you say you did actually have a role on Dallas once, huh?
Oh yeah, I did a few episodes of Dallas, and I had a lot of fun. Met a lot of really neat actors: Burt Reynolds, Lonnie Anderson, and here's an insider for you. Burt Reynolds is so short that he has to wear elevator sneakers. The guy can't be over about 5'2".
Is it true he's bald as a billiard?
Oh, is he ever?
Billiard
Yeah.
ball?
Yeah.
I was wondering about that because he has a pretty must have an expensive-looking toupee there.
Say, Chuck, why hasn't the press ever brought up your opponent's bad checks that he wrote a few years ago?
Well, you know, I talked to a reporter from the Leader-Telegram about that recently, and they kind of say, well, that was dealt with 2 or 3 years ago, but that whole check scandal was never really dealt with. It was swept under the rug by people that control Washington, and that's basically the ones that have all the seniority and the ones that had the most to lose, and that's the House, the congressmen and women themselves. And so there was a lot of people, there was quite a few people that lost elections in '92, but there was a lot of them that got off the hook. And I know at one time Steve Gunderson said that he didn't have any checks in that scandal. And so I went back through the Leader-Telegram and back to March and April of '92 and looked through the records there, and the Leader-Telegram did a good job of taking Steve Gunderson to task on that, but it never does kind of give the end of the story. At one time, Steve said, back in the fall of '91 when that first broke, Steve said, don't worry, I don't have any checks. But then he had to come back in March of '92 and admit that he had 12. And then the House Ethics Committee came back and said, no, Steve, I think you had a few more than that. So they found 12 more, which made it a total of 22, and it ended up that Steve had overdrafts totaling $13,000. And one of those checks was for $10,000. Now just imagine, caller, what would happen to you if you wrote a $10,000 check and you didn't have anything to cover it in the bank?
What did he write it for?
Well, according to this article, March 23rd, 1992, the one check was for $10,000 for a construction, somebody in a construction business or a contractor or an interior decorator that it was for work on his Virginia home. Now, the reporter I talked to acted like he never even knew that Steve Gunderson was building a house in Virginia. It says here that the check was for $10,000 to a contractor working on his home, but he doesn't know who the contractor's name was. Then in another article it says that he says here that he told that contractor not to cash that check for a couple days. So he has selective memory there, but that's kind of par for the course for Steve over the years. He remembers what he wants to. But in this case, it never did really come out who the check was to.
Well, we've always been under the impression he's got a little trailer house down in Trumpeter County that he's got. Well, I'll hang up and let you guys go. You're doing a good job there tonight.
Okay, thank you. Now I guess the editorial Leader-Telegram just raked him over the coals real heavy on this about those checks and said that there's no excuse for it. Now, some of the other people didn't get off as lightly as Steve. They lost their seats in the House, and some of them had hundreds of checks. But the whole thing was just kind of swept together in a big pile, and then they threw a big rug over it, and the whole thing disappeared. They shut down the House bank. All the checks disappeared. All the rats scurried into their holes, and that's where that whole situation is. To this day, nobody knows whatever happened to the check-kiting scandal. It's just totally disappeared.
You suppose maybe the Leader-Telegram's a little prejudice? I noticed when they run photos of yourself and Mr. Stour and Gunderson, you always see Gunderson right up at the top, the big picture there.
Yes. Well, I think the Leader-Telegram is catering to Steve, and I think they want him to win, and that's their boy, you know. And that's unfortunate that they've turned a blind eye to some of the other things just to make sure that Steve wins. But I think Steve's days are numbered, and tomorrow will be the final day of the Steve Gunderson saga. And the Leader-Telegram can't save him this time. They've been pretty much doing a cover story for him for quite a while. It doesn't matter how many color photographs they put on the front page, and you know, and how many glamour articles they write, and how many times they keep the other candidates blocked out of the system and don't write anything about them, or they make up things. Like in my case, they said that I was convicted of dealing in narcotics, which is totally false. And I've talked to a lawyer Both Channel 13 and the Leader Telegram both falsely accused me of that on several occasions. And Channel 13 would not retract it, and the Leader Telegram picked up on it, and they started saying the same thing. Marijuana is not a narcotic. It's not habit forming. You don't shoot it into your veins. It's not like opium or codeine or heroin. It is marijuana. It's totally separate. But they saw fit to poison the public and try and have them believe that that's what I was arrested for, and it's unfortunate that they would stoop to that low type of journalism. It's called yellow journalism. They practiced it over the weekend on a guy named Tony Gobin, a Republican candidate for the state assembly. He lives in Elk Mound, and they waited till the last moment to bring up some back taxes he owns on property. They could have brought that up 2-3 months ago, but they waited till just now so that they could kill his candidacy. They did it to a guy named Flynn here in town. I don't know if you remember that fiasco. Yes. They waited right till the end. And they also did it to EJ, who we mentioned earlier, Ellery Jordahl. They did the same thing to him. That's the Leader Telegram. That's how they operate. So it's nothing new for them to do what they did, and it's unfortunate that they operate that way. And it's basically because they consider that they don't have any competition in this area. And hopefully some of the radio stations and my program and other programs will point out the other news that the one local paper refuses to print. So I'm not going to condemn Mr. Govan for his problem with taxes, but the Leader Telegram sure did a number on him. And hopefully the voters will take that into consideration, that the Leader Telegram has their agenda. They're trying to elect the people that are politically correct in their eyes. And I've personally seen the owners of the Leader Telegram cater to Mr. Gunderson and just drool all over him, and it's pathetic. And they've got their front group called the CPR here locally, Citizens for the Preservation of, or Committee or whatever, for the Preservation of Republicanism. But the kind of republicanism they're wanting to preserve doesn't need preserved. It needs a rapid meltdown, and I've even heard rumors that some of the people on the Leader Telegram write the articles for the CPR group. And the CPR has attacked me falsely, and they've used the names of people like Rob Krybeck to try and cause trouble with the FCC with me and the Federal Elections Commission. And in the case of the Federal Elections Commission, they threw out the charges of leaders of the CPR as frivolous and ridiculous and no truth to them, but that's how they operate. And that's why the Republican Party is in a meltdown, because of the CPR type groups that are operating around the country and trying to poison the political system. And they are creating the chasm in the Republican Party, and that's why people like me are leaving the Republican Party and joining other parties. There's a lot of people going to independent parties, a lot of people going to the U.S. Taxpayers Party. There's over 300,000 people joined the U.S. Taxpayers Party in California alone. Nevada is growing by leaps and bounds. Indiana is starting a party. Their U.S. Taxpayers Party is in about 25, 30 states now. By 1996, they'll be in all 50 states and fielding a very serious presidential candidate. So that's some of the problems we have. I think we got time for one more call, according to the old clock on the wall. Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
All right, nice seeing you, Chuck.
Yeah.
I just got to kind of comment and just see what you want to think about. You know, a lot of voters now, they had the thing on the nightly news where voters are fed up, and I just kind of got a comment for a lot of voters out there tomorrow to keep in mind. A lot of people, we want to cut taxes and we want to cut spending. Well, you know, they got to remember that people have to pay for the services they're getting, and a lot of people like cut programs, but not their program. I just want to know what you think about that.
Well, some of these programs are mandated, and there is room for to look at a lot of these programs, like the Department of Education. They don't teach one child, and yet they spend billions. And I would like to see more of the federal educational agenda go back to the states. After all, the students are in the states; they're not out in Washington. And Thank God they aren't inside the Beltway out there, because it's a total mess out there. And the people inside the Beltway are catering to themselves to keep themselves in power. They've got a mentality of where they think they're higher than everybody else. They've turned themselves into little princes running around with all their special perks. And they've lost touch with the people of the 3rd District, and they've lost touch with people in districts all over the United States, and that's why people are going to vote them out tomorrow, because they've lost touch, and they've just created their own little fiefdoms with their multi-million-dollar retirement plans and their built-in cost of living increases, while people are trying to eke out a living on these Social Security checks. The congressmen and women in Washington have made sure that they've got built-in cost of living increases to cover inflation, while other people are just barely pinching pennies to get by. And I know Fred, on many occasions, has ran out of money before the end of the month on his meager Social Security check, while the congressmen and women have lavished themselves with big multi-million-dollar retirement plans. So we're going to say goodbye. Don't forget to vote tomorrow. Craig Lee's been a guest with me. Don't forget Roy Rogers Hoff. This is Chuck Lee signing off. We'll see you tomorrow night on television. And don't forget to vote. Good evening.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we